I know my girl is happy. I know she is enthused. She is ready to roll. And that's Amy Trask, of course, former executive for the Raiders, first female executive in the history of the NFL, and a great analyst with me every Sunday on Tops. I get to sit there and talk football with Amy, and, of course, Fletch and Shine and a fun crew. And Amy is with us here on Tiki and Tierney. What's up, Amy? How are you, kiddo?
Well, I'm doing well. I made it back across the country. We're going to have sort of a bitterly cold fall day at the beach. It's only going to be 74 degrees.
Oh, how do you survive?
I'll bundle up, BT. I'll bundle up.
Understood. Now, I know how much you're enjoying this, and certainly want you to expound on this in a little bit. But I'm curious, how much would Al Davis like this team?
Oh, I think he'd like a tremendous bit about this team. Look, you and I have discussed this at some length, BT. There were tremendous improvements made to the roster over the offseason, and in particular, from my perspective at least, a major improvement on the line of scrimmage with the additions to the offensive line.
You know, it's interesting when you look at how teams evolve and grow. A lot of it is head coaching. Now, I know you were with the Raiders when Hugh Jackson was there, and it was a little short-lived. But BT and I were looking at some stats, and the Browns are bad right now. We know that. But they're leading the league in rushing. And it's one of those fundamental stats that don't necessarily show up in wins and loss categories, but it's important. How good of a coach is he going to be?
Well, I think he has, and I think the world of Hugh, and you guys know that. Hugh was in Oakland under some extraordinarily difficult circumstances and didn't really have the opportunity in Oakland that I hope he enjoys in Cleveland. When he was named head coach by Al, that was with a staff of assistants selected by Al. You know, Hugh didn't have the luxury in Oakland of picking his own assistants and really being part of building the team in many regards, and I hope he has that experience in Cleveland. He does what I believe the very, very best coaches do, which is evaluates the talent on his roster and best positions his players and his team to succeed.
Talking to Amy Trask with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. Now, Amy, and anytime it comes up on the show, I certainly know how you feel about Hugh, and he just gave us a little look into your Hugh Jackson soul there. You're a monster fan, and with good reason. Be specific. Maybe, you know, as a national audience, I think a lot of people hear Hugh Jackson, they hear the term quarterback whisperer, but specific to however you want to position it, what makes him special? It's one thing to say that he's special, but why specifically is Hugh Jackson special?
I think he's got a tremendous mind for offensive football in particular, but football as a whole. He's a student of the game, very, very cerebral. Let me give you an example. When he took over as head coach, the first thing he did was grab players, Darren McFadden in particular, and said, "What do you do best? Tell me, Darren, what you believe you excel at doing." He listened, and then he maximized Darren McFadden's talent, and Darren had, I believe, his best year as a Raider under Hugh Jackson. Jason Campbell was the quarterback until he was injured, and Hugh took Jason Campbell and said, how do I best position this player to be the best he can be? His play calling was magnificent. Look, every head coach has areas in which they are better than others. Hugh Jackson is just an incredible play caller and really does take whatever talent he's handed and maximize it. And this is something you and I have discussed on Sunday mornings, E.T. Right now, he is holding together that Cleveland roster with duct tape and bandages. The roster had a number of holes going into the season, and now with the injuries incurred, even more holes. So if Sashi Brown and DePodesta give him a roster which is at all remotely competitive, I think the Cleveland Browns can be on the right track for a while.
You know, it's when you look at a coach and an organization standpoint, another guy who's doing an unbelievable job, obviously, because he was there for a year and won a Super Bowl, is Gary Kubiak. But the question for you goes a little bit higher. John Elway, I mean, we kind of don't know what former players, even if they are great quarterbacks, are going to be in the front office, right? We had the same situation down in Miami where Dan didn't really want to do it, talking about Dan Marino, but now he's back in an advisory role. But John Elway has it seems like everything he touches is turning to gold. The defense is fantastic. He gets Trevor Siemian, who nobody knew anything about coming out of Northwestern. He plays great for the first 3 weeks, and then he gets hurt. Now Paxton Lynch looks like he could step in and play should things go awry with Siemian. How good of a job has he done?
He's done a sensational job, and let me put what I'm about to say in context. John was at Stanford when I was at Cal. John was a Bronco while I was with a Raider. I am convinced that at some point I will be in a senior commune, and John will be in the competing senior commune, and he'll still be excelling at football, much to my chagrin. But all Stanford, Cal, Bronco, Raider teasing aside, John is magnificent. And, you just hit some important points, of course, which is not every former player excels in a front office position in the manner in which John has excelled. I think he's doing a spectacular job. And in one area that may not be as obvious to some, he has teamed up with Joe Ellis, who oversees the Broncos' business affairs. And together, those two are collaborating and cooperating so that the Broncos are excelling on the field under John's leadership, and they're excelling off the field in terms of business decisions, estate and succession planning, and all of the areas that Joe oversees. And those two men have a true partnership, and I think that's why the Broncos are so well situated.
They've got a good thing going, no doubt, Amy. Amy Trask with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. Amy, I asked Tiki this the first hour of the show. I just kind of threw it at him, not knowing which way he would go direction-wise. And even Tiki paused and he said, that's a tough one. I'm going to throw it by you. Carolina, Arizona. More confidence to rebound. Where does it lie for you? Who do you have more faith in right now?
Wow. In part, that will now rest on the condition of the two quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Each is in the concussion protocol as a result of the games yesterday. Assuming for the moment that Cam Newton and Carson Palmer emerge from concussion protocol at the same time. In other words, one is not in longer than the other. Mm-hmm. I lean to Arizona. I think they are at this point perhaps a more well-balanced team, but I think the world of Ron Rivera, I think the world of Bruce Arians, both of those teams are very, very well coached. BT, it may be a coin toss, so to speak, as to which rights its ship more quickly. But these are two surprise stories of the year from my perspective.
Well, and Aim, I'll tell you this, there's no guarantee that either team reverses this and gets
Correct.
It going. You know what I mean? There's some, I don't want to say fatal flaws, but there's some really dangerous warning signs that would not exactly embolden me to support either in an unflinching manner right now. There's a lot of cracks in both foundations. We'll see if they get it going. Should be interesting.
I think you're absolutely right. And, there is that issue of the Super Bowl hangover, if you will. And I said going into the year, and I still believe, that Ron Rivera is very, very well suited to handle those issues that many teams grapple with. But you're right. There's no guarantee that either of these teams will right the ship.
A team that needs to find their way, and you talk about front office issues, you talk about on-field issues, is the Indianapolis Colts. Now, people may not understand if you're not digging deep in, but Ryan Grigson really hasn't provided Andrew Luck with the protection or the assets that he needs to be successful. I love Frank Gore. He's one of my favorite players, people in the league, and he had a pretty decent game last weekend, but he's 35 years old, 34 years old. The wide receivers aren't superstars. There's no Julio Joneses or Antonio Browns on that squad. Have they done a good enough job with what we all thought was one of the elite quarterbacks coming into the league in Andrew Luck, of surrounding him with the right people?
Boy, Tiki, tremendous points. I agree with you. I too think Andrew Luck can be a superb quarterback if given some tools. And it was just last season, and then in the off season, that we were all noting collectively, you've got to give him some help. You've got to give him better pass protection. You've got to give him better weapons. And there was a sense going into the offseason, free agency and the draft, that was the plan and the intent in Indianapolis. And they didn't succeed in doing that. So really, they're squandering some important years from what can be a franchise quarterback.
You know, Amy, it's interesting the way you position that because, and Tiki will back me up on this. For years, I've used the word intersection, and applying to
Windows.
the windows of intersection with the prime star, the prime meat of a star's career, intersecting with the overall health and construction of the rest of the roster. And I think this applies to Phillip Rivers, who was on the wrong
Oh
side
boy.
of that. And I know you have great respect for him anytime he comes up. Even though, he can beat you a few times here and there, you revere his competitiveness, as do I. But it just seems like, boy, the NFL, there's just examples of guys being drafted into the wrong spot, and there's no guarantee. I don't care how good you are to the luck point that it actually gets turned around. So and we've talked about this on the show. I mean, Gregson and Pagano dynamic, it's not really good.
Well, look, if you have the number one draft pick, unless you have traded to get there, so let me state it differently. If you earn the number one draft pick, there's a reason you've earned the number one draft pick. But that quarterback, if you pick him at number one alone, is not going to disguise every single hole in your roster. And this is something I think is a fascinating exercise. Imagine Jacksonville and what Jacksonville has done to build out that roster. And imagine Indianapolis if you swap quarterbacks. If you put Andrew Luck on the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think that's an entirely different equation than Luck is right now in Indianapolis.
True.
Because they've not built out that roster around him.
100%. Aim, before we let you go, and it's Amy Trask with us here on Tiki and Tierney, former executive, highest-ranking female executive ever in the history of the NFL, courtesy of Al Davis. And your story's amazing. The way you reached out to the Raiders, you were still in school, I believe, to pursue an internship, and it worked out clearly. Amy's got a book out, and it's doing really well. Give us maybe a 20 or a 30-second anecdote from the book that would compel somebody to go out and get their hands on it. I know the reviews are great, and it's selling well, but what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm going to answer that very quickly because I'm going to use a few of those 30 seconds to say one thing I never, ever, ever like to leave a radio show with you without saying, and I want your listeners to know that. I adore and respect both of you men. And I now have the opportunity and the privilege to work with you, BT, on television, and I want your listeners to know what a sensational teammate you are.
Oh,
and
thank
that
you,
I
Amy.
would not be able to be on television. I would not have survived the first year without you as the teammate you are. You helped me in every regard, and you actually deserve a gold medal for a patient man category.
Again, you sell yourself short, but thanks, Aim. I love working with you. It's
You
all
were
good.
patient, and you were kind, and you were gracious, and you helped me in every regard.
Until I talk about the Jets and turn into a raving lunatic.
Well, we all do that at times.
Yeah, I got
look,
you.
As to the book, I had two goals in mind. I wanted to be honest, and I was, and I wanted to be true to myself, and I was. So whether I'm sharing a funny anecdote, a sentimental anecdote, an important or a special anecdote, I was honest and I was true to myself. And I share memories and reflections and anecdotes. I don't know that I can share any with you without causing you to violate all sorts of FCC warnings and rules because of the language
It's
associated
raw.
with some of those anecdotes.
Yeah.
But I'll share one, and that was, Rich Gannon trying to coach me up in the galley of the plane as we were headed into Philadelphia to play the Eagles. And he said, Amy, if you're going to order a cheesesteak, don't order like you're you and like you're from California with none of this and extra this and more of this and less of this. And he taught me how to order a cheesesteak. And I messed it up, and I was almost killed by the cheesesteak vendor. So, Rich Gannon, another great teammate, and I messed up his advice.
I like Rich a lot. Yeah.
The thing that's kind of fun when you talk about the reviews is the book is being regarded by many in the manner I hoped, which is not simply a sports book and a peek behind Raider curtains and NFL owner meeting curtains, but also a book about business and grappling with the issues of women in a male-dominated field and business advice in general, and that's a lot of fun.
Well, mission accomplished. You hit all three. Amy, I'll see you a little less than a week as we get ready for Week 5 on Tops. Enjoy the game tonight, and always great catching up.
And I will try to bundle up and enjoy our fall weather out here, Ben.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be tough. I'll see you later, kiddo. Thanks, Aim.
Bye-bye.
You got it.